Well, good evening. It's City Administrator here. It's 6 o'clock straight up, but the chairman or chairperson is still not online yet. And I guess we'll give it a couple minutes here, awaiting that.
I think she's about to log in. Maybe we can, is Kevin here?
Vice Chair is here if you want to get started and we can pick it up.
Yeah, just so that you know, Dawn said that she didn't indicate she might be late, but she said she had an important phone call that's coming through on a personal matter. So it may have come through right now that she was going to have to attend to. So I would suggest that we just go ahead, which was her suggestion, to have Kevin take over the meeting until she can resume.
Okay. All right, everybody. I'm calling the meeting to order at 6:01. Pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Jackie, proceed with roll call, please.
Okay. Mayor Holston,
I'm here, and
Councilor Whitney,
Here.
Brenna Chrisman,
Here.
Councilor Coker,
Here.
Priscilla Davidson,
Here.
Councilor Spleedoff,
He did message me and tell me he might be late.
okay. April Allen,
Here.
Kevin Gobelman,
Here.
Jan Christensen,
Here.
Councilor Kenyon,
Here.
Councilor Bjornson, Jan Hooker,
She'll be unable to make it tonight, Jackie.
okay. Councilor Hollett, okay.
Councilor Hollett and Councilor Bjornson are muted at the moment.
I got Bjornson. I don't see Hollett.
It's under Scott Holland.
Councilor Spleeloff just logged in, Jackie.
Oh, thank you. Well, I see Scott Hollett, but I don't see Chrissy.
Sarah, the meeting is yours.
Thank you. We need to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
We already did that.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. Do we have any public comment? I don't see any hands. Real quick though, Brian, do you have me set as a host?
No, I don't see anybody. I'm at the office. So
Okay, well, I'd like to know if there's any members of the committee that need to declare a conflict.
This is Bobby. I need to declare a potential conflict of interest because my brother Rick Zelstra is doing some subcontracting for the city, and it's still unclear if he's been paid or will be paid for the work he's done.
Okay.
So.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Bjornson here. I need to declare a potential conflict of interest because I'm on the volunteer roster at the fire department.
Thank you.
It's Priscilla Davidson. I need to declare a potential conflict because my husband works for the Oakridge PD.
Thank you, Priscilla.
April Allen here. I'd like to declare a potential conflict of interest. I caretake for the city of Oakridge at Greenwater's Rest Area, and I am on the roster at the fire department as well.
Thank you.
This is Counselor Hollett here. I'm here so if I can be added for roll call. I apologize. I had some trouble logging in. And I do have a potential conflict of interest. My husband is employed by the fire department, and I'm also a volunteer for the fire department.
Thank you.
Brenna Chrisman, potential conflict. My husband works for the Public Works Department, City of Oakridge.
Thank you, Brenna. Are there any more?
Yes, this is Audie and I just checked in. I'm sorry I'm late.
Okay. Thank you. All right, I think we'll move into, is there any?
And Chair, this is the CA. Are we on old
Yes.
business? Are we on old business now?
Yes. Yes,
So
please.
I'd like to respond to a question from one of the budget committee members asked 2 sessions ago about tenants at the WAC. And I do have the answer now. So of the people that we rent to at the WAC, it's the UW CDC food box for $266.70 a month. The UW CDC keg and cast for $26 a month. Women's space for $20.97 a month. And to an artist for $400 a month for storage and facility. And the Victory Christian Church for $160 a month. And those are the tenants that pay.
Thank you. On that last one, what did you say the amount was on the Christian church?
$160 a month.
It's actually, Brian, sorry, it's $65 a month. They pay like 3 months at a time, so I might have given you the wrong amount.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
And I also have some more business if we're ready to move on.
I have a quick
Yes.
question.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Brian said that those are the ones that pay. Can you tell me, Brian, if there's how many others are there that don't pay, just so we know how many tenants total?
Off the top of my head, it's as you know, the theater is kind of using the gym in exchange for fixing up the gym, and we have the warming center which uses it seasonally. But other than that, I believe that's all the non-payers. And maybe the senior lounge. So we do sometimes get income from the senior lounge if the room's rented out, but otherwise we don't get any income there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to go into new business then, Brian, or did you have more old business?
I have a couple more things in old business, if I may.
Go ahead.
Let me share a different screen here. What I'd like to do is, let's see here. Just so the committee is aware, are you seeing the timeline slide now?
Yes.
we are.
Yes.
So I just want to make you aware of kind of where we are as we get closer to the end of June. So once the budget is approved by the budget committee, we've got to publish the LB1, which is this budget summary, and a public notice in a newspaper and online, and that has to be done 5 to 30 days in advance. So using the shorter number of 5 days, and throw in the 2 days that it takes to put it together after the budget meeting and to get it to the guard, and then the guard will get it into the next edition that they can, which is typically the next day. If you do that, and let's assume that you approve the budget today, that means that as soon as it could get to city council would be May 25th, obviously on a special session. Or if for whatever reason it goes to the next meeting, May 25th, then the soonest you'll see it in front of council is June 1st, more likely June 3rd at the regular meeting. So I just kind of want to let people know there's like a 7-day time lag between when you actually approve it to when it can actually get to council. Just be aware of that as we deliberate. Any questions there?
If there's no other questions, I just want to know if any of that affects the public hearing. Does it need to be published before the public hearing in May?
No, that's the 5 to 30 days. That's the notice for the public hearing. So that's assuming that we're going to do them concurrently with the city council meeting. So you'd have the public hearing and the city council would vote on the budget, ideally, most expeditious way.
Okay, so I'm a little confused because I thought we had a public hearing in the budget committee and also a public hearing at the council meeting where the final adoption would take place. Is that not right?
You can do a public hearing in the budget committee process. What the rationale behind this, or the requirement behind this, is the Department of Administrative Services requires 2 public hearings in order to accept your shared revenue. The council,
Okay.
when it gets to council, they adopt the budget, they approve the levy rate, and they they certify their services, critical services that they provide the citizens. And that requires 2 public hearings. So one of them would be the public hearing that city council does. The other is going to be scheduled in May 25th if you guys continue on. Otherwise, we'll just do it sometime between then and when the council meeting is.
Okay, thank you. Did you still have old business?
There's one more question. Is Councilor Sweetlop, do you still have another question, or is that an old hand?
Oh, it's a new hand.
Okay.
When's our drop dead deadline that we have to have it in?
If you haven't adopted, if council hasn't adopted a budget by June 30th, no one comes to work the next day on city staff.
Okay, so then we would have to have an executive session to get that, or another session? And
You'd have to just keep adding on special sessions until the budget gets passed between now or between whenever it gets adopted or approved, between then and when June 30th, because you don't want to go past June 30th, obviously.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Whitney?
Yeah, once we're done with this little discussion, I have a couple things that I think are old business that I wanted to bring up.
If
Okay,
there are no more
check,
questions on
Brian.
the timeline, I have one more item. I wanted to ensure, number one, that each member of the budget committee got the email I sent on standards of conduct for the budget committee sent out, and make sure there were no questions on what I did send out about the standards of conduct and sharing information.
I did receive that. If there's anyone here that doesn't know what he's talking about, could you please speak up?
I received it also.
Okay. I will move into
You have one
Councilor
question
Whitney.
pending.
Yeah, Councilor Whitney, go ahead.
Yeah, so what Brian just brought up was exactly one of the things I was going to mention. And I think it would be great if it could be brought into the record and published with the record so that people can see that. And that way we make sure everybody that's on the budget committee has had an opportunity to see it in some fashion and it's transparent. And then the other thing, at the last meeting, Dan Barclay had a public comment that he brought up, and then it was later answered and clarified by the city administrator by email, and we all received a copy of that. And I think it would be good to put that as part of the public record with our budget committee, just because it adds that transparency piece. And if people are looking for or have questions to what Dan brought up, the answers could be very transparent and part of our public meeting records as we go through the budget committee. So those are the two things I had.
Okay, I think it would be appropriate then to ask the committee, is there anyone here who disagrees with that statement that Bobby requested to put those two documents on a public record?
I have a question real quick.
Related to this?
Yes.
Go ahead.
The first part, did she say that she wanted it on the public record because she wants to make sure that everybody on the budget committee has seen it? Because if it went out in email, then everybody in the budget committee got it.
So I have two primary reasons. One was that, just to make sure, because I would assume that everybody would have received it, but you don't know for sure.
They just
Unless,
had an opportunity to speak up if they didn't.
Yeah.
correct, I understand. And then the other reason was for transparency for citizens. I think it's important that people can see that because we're all striving to be very transparent in what we do. And I think it just adds to that transparency.
Mayor Holston, does your hand raised pertain to this topic or is it something else?
Yes, it does.
I'll call on you then.
Thank you. Regarding this topic, if we were actually meeting in person with everyone, I would hope that a copy of that email would be distributed around the table and everyone would initial it because it's a legal protection for the city to ensure that everybody has seen it. And it's not a indication that you agree with it or you disagree with it. It is an indication that you have received and read it. And so therefore I would go one step further and ask that the committee is polled and affirmatively respond that yes, they have seen it, so that it is entered into the record.
Okay. Is there anyone here who disagrees with putting that on the record? And is the person with the label iPad part of this committee? If you are, please unmute yourself and speak up. Okay, I would ask that you would take your hand down if you're not part of the committee. So why don't we do a roll call, Jackie, to vote on whether that we all agree that we have seen the document so that it can go on the record.
Okay, so they'll
And
just
then it would
yes
be
or no if they saw it. Okay, Mayor Holston,
Aye.
Councillor Whitney,
Aye.
Brenna Chrisman,
Aye.
Councillor Coker,
Aye.
Priscilla Davidson,
Aye.
Councillor Splitoff,
Aye.
April Allen,
Aye.
Kevin Gobelman,
Aye.
Jan Christensen,
Aye.
Councillor Kenyon,
Aye.
Councillor Bjornson,
Aye.
Councillor Hollett,
Aye.
that's all.
Thank you. So Brian, will you please add those to the public record? Those
Yes,
two
we will.
documents. Thank you. Does that conclude old business, or Kathy, did you have something in addition?
No, I didn't. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Counselor Splita?
Yes, I didn't get to hear Melissa's vote. She was broke up. Could I get her to repeat, please?
I said yes, Audie.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so it looks like we're moving into new business.
So we've presented the budget in full by line item, and we kind of are ready to hand it over to the committee for deliberation. I have motions available if you get to a point where you're ready to approve the budget. But if not, obviously, we have another meeting scheduled for May 25th, so I'll hand it over to the committee for deliberation.
Thank you, Brian. So I'd like to open the floor to anyone and everyone on the committee who has recommendations for ways to balance the budget. Mayor Holston, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a list of things, some of which I think is a suggestion. So what these are recommendations to the committee to forward to council. So I have a series of them, and they constitute a small amount of helping us reduce our costs and increase our incomes. And so I'll just run down them and see where they go. Increase rents at the WAC by 50%. Direct the library to initiate an annual fee for adult library cards, both within and without of the city limits. Eliminate the fall fun night, $2,500, and suggest instead that they fundraise. Reduce by half the stipend pay for volunteers at the fire department. Open negotiations, direct the CA to open negotiations with our unions to freeze the wage hikes for 3 years and raise from 7 to 9% employee contributions to healthcare. Begin a review of all the court fees. Mothball and sell Osprey Park, its prime real estate. Increase all the fees that we may. Go ahead.
I wanted to know if you could repeat whatever you said about Osprey Park, because it cut out.
Mothball and or sell Osprey Park, its prime real estate. Increase any fees that we charge at Horton Park for both adult and kids. Initiate a fee. Let me go back to that one. Eliminate all fee waivers for the use of Green Waters Park. I had someone suggested to me that we put parking meters on First Street. So I said I would add that to my list. And also initiate a fee, an additional fee to Hazeldale and Westford residents that would be in the same assessed amount that Oakridge residents, whatever it is we determine to do, are also being assessed. And I would suggest that we initiate the fee as requested and leave it up to the council to determine any variances or special conditions for those who are less fortunate. So that's just a start of, to throw out there. I don't want to make a motion on any of them, but they're just kind of what I came up with. Okay.
Thank you. And with that, I think that it might be best that we go roundtable with open ideas like you just did, go down the list before we go into discussion on all of them, because there may be multiple people with the same ideas or maybe not. So instead of delving through each one individually. We'll just go around the table for all the ideas. So the next person that I would call on would be Counselor Whitney. I believe she was next.
Okay, I would actually like to close the WAC. That is one of my suggestions. And then, this one's a hard one for me. Eliminate the stipends for the fire department, because if we're going to ask staff to give up and have possibly have a decrease in pay or what they're doing, they're actually paid staff and people that we pay to work in the city. So why are we going to continue paying stipends for volunteers if we're going to ask our staff to give up? So
Did you have
no, not right now.
Okay. Next would be Counselor Sweetoff. If you still have your hand up, I saw it go up earlier.
Yeah, Mayor hit on a bunch of the stuff that I was going to say. So whenever we get through
Okay.
here, we can go around. But yeah,
Okay.
I think that we should close the WAC is one of them and sell off all of our properties that the city owns around here. And, you know, like she said, the Osprey Park down there, that's a big area that we could pull up quite a bit of money and get us out of the hole here for a while. So I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Hawley.
I just wanted to say I agree about closing the WAC. We had never discussed raising the rent on the WAC, so I'm curious, maybe next meeting or something, Brian could do some type of example to us if we did raise the rates for them, what they would need to be to do that. But I still think that from what I know about the WAC, I would urge that we also close the WAC and sell it.
Thank you.
And I do have one more thing I wanted to ask about. I don't know if it's the appropriate time, but I wanted to ask about the rescue, the COVID rescue grant that's on the budget. Would now be the time to bring that up or another time?
Well, I think if it's part of what we should be discussing tonight, now is fine. What specifically are you talking about? The one that's supposed to be coming in June, the one that the president just did, that's a little over 600,000.
Yes, that's the one.
Okay.
So my understanding was that it would be 300 and something per year. And I think it was either the first or the second budget meeting, Brian had mentioned that would need to be discussed, how it is spent. And I was hoping we could discuss that as well. I think that would bring down the money in the budget that would potentially be put onto the water bill. And I think that since it is a COVID grant, and I think a lot of the COVID risks and things have been associated with police and emergency services, I was curious if this group can be discussing about allocating a good portion of that money in between both police and emergency services.
Okay, I noted that as a question. I think that Brian did mention earlier that it was going to be a council decision on that. So Brian, could you clarify whether or not this topic would apply to the budget committee, or if it's really only a council only discussion?
I think you need to wait for the council, because if you remember, it's already written in as a revenue on the budget. So the budget is really already taken into account that additional funds for the next year, for that year. So there's not a whole lot to talk about other than the other end on the expenditures. And the guidance did come out, and it's a decision that obviously we need to make, that the council needs to make as to how they want to allocate those funds. And Eric might have
Okay.
more. He's got his hand up.
Yeah, I saw that. Eric, is it about this question or this topic?
Yeah, I just wanted to
Go ahead.
reiterate that the American Rescue Plan grant money is already in the budget. So there's nothing of it that we can add to this budget right now. It's already in there. That's it.
Well, actually, only half of it's in there. And I wanted to ask about that because when I looked it up online, it does say that the funds are going to be issued 90 days after the bill was signed by the president, which puts it like early to mid-June.
That's correct. We're expecting 343,000 this year. So that 343,000 that's in this budget that everyone is looking at is the second half.
The second half. Okay. Okay. That's interesting.
We have not got the first half yet, but we're anticipating that we'll get it before June 30th.
Yeah. And we would then do a supplemental and get it into our budget
Right,
for the current
which
year.
how that would affect this budget is it could, depending on what the council decides to do with it, it could raise like the beginning balance in one of these accounts. Does that make sense?
It does to me.
Yeah,
Does
if
that
we
make
got
sense to
if we got that 343,000 before July 1st, then we would, you know, have that extra money. And then depending on how the council wants to spend it, some of it, you know, whatever is not spent at the end of the year would be added to a beginning fund balance in this budget that we're looking at.
Okay, does anyone who has their hands up have any comments on this particular topic?
I had one more. I just was curious. So basically, it essentially goes into the general fund pool and helps offset deficit for the entire budget. Is that correct, Eric?
Yeah, that's correct. And I'm sure you guys remember that I've talked about this restricted cash balance issue over the course of the last year. So we still need to wait to see what's going to happen with our cash balances at the end of this year as we approach June 30th. So you just need to consider that. If we get that American Rescue Plan grant money, that is really going to bail us out of that restricted cash balance thing. If we don't get it, then things are going to be a little tighter.
But just this is a CA, let me just clarify on that comment though. It does come into the city, into the general fund as revenue. However, we have to come up with that equivalent amount of expenditures that are qualified expenditures under the guidance given by Treasury. So we just can't go spend $343,000 on vehicles. It has to be, we have to account for that $343,000 on expenditures that are authorized by the Treasury. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So Brian, since that money is not expected to arrive until early to mid-June, is it your opinion that the council would not be discussing how we would like to spend that money until after it's received, or can we make a pre-plan?
Well, now that the guidance is here, I'd be happy to work that. I mean, we're in the middle of this budget, so it's going to be a busy time if you want to do that. But nothing says we have to spend the money immediately. It's good for, I think it's 5 years. So no one says we have to spend it right off the bat.
Okay. But that does sound like it's going to be going to council, so it doesn't seem like it would be something we would be discussing here. Chrissy, if that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, so Eric, did you have something else pertaining to this? Otherwise, I'll put you in line with everyone else.
No, I didn't. I just put my hand down. I just wanted to talk about the rescue plan grant money. That's all.
Okay, thank you. So next I have Counselor Bjornson.
Yeah, I was trying to make note of all the things that Kathy was saying. But just, Kathy, have you looked at all of that, and do you have any ballpark figure of if we did everything, implemented every one of your suggestions, how much that would save total?
Not as much as I had hoped it would. You know, obviously, where is that piece of my paper? I've been doing figures all day long here. What I was looking at was reducing the fee that, you know, by 1/4 of that amount, so that it comes, it would go down to 456,000 that we would be charging to residents, and then trying to make up the difference to get to that 100, and that extra 152,000 that it was reduced by. And I didn't get anywhere near that close. I got to about, you know, 90. If you do the library, well, I had initially thought closing the library and closing the WAC itself only gets to 98,650. Increasing the rent at the WAC goes from 11,000 then up to 17,000. You know, if you not double it, but increase it by half. I don't know how many library cards or library patrons we have that are within the city. That's a figure that I really don't know, but I think it's something we should start thinking about doing. And I don't have really numbers. I don't think they're huge as far as not waiving fees at Green Waters and increasing fees at Horton Park. I don't know if we charge fees currently. We have a mutual agreement with a school for some of those teams that play there, but we also use it for adult teams that want to do softball, but we could start initiating a fee for those things too. I was looking at ways that we could begin to spread the cost out a little bit. So to answer your question, Melissa, really, no, I don't have a lot of hard figures.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Melissa, did you have any ideas that you wanted to contribute before I move on?
Not specifically that haven't already been mentioned yet.
Okay, then next up is April Allen.
It's already been said a couple times, so I put my hand down, but I really think that closing the WAC would be a good option.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Coker.
Myself too, it's already been said a few times. I agree with closing the WAC. I also think we should stop doing fee waivers for not only like Horton Park and them, but also for the disc golf course. I think that it's not going to make up a lot, but it is going to make up some. And everything else that I had in mind has already been mentioned.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Coker. I wanted to mention that a couple of ideas that I have are, well, I had it in front of me a second ago. I think that it should be considered to reduce the fund for the library by $11,000 or $12,000. My idea was to also close the WAC, but I figured since Brian asked for a timeline, if we gave him 6 months, that would cut half of the cost for running the WAC this year. And I also think we should make a reduction in parks for 40,000 and in the admin department for 120,000. And those were my only ideas. So I would go around again. I'll just start taking more comments in order. Audie, I believe you're next, and then Chrissy.
I know it's been said before, but I can't recall. How much does it cost us to run the WAC per year? And then how much does it cost us to run the park there by the WAC?
Audie, do you have your budget in front of you?
Yes, I do.
I actually don't have mine. I don't know what I did with it. But there should be a page.
Kathy
for
just
the-
commented on the chat.
Oh, okay. 63,900 for the WAC.
Okay, thank you. And the park there beside it?
Well, I'm sure that
Or-
that is included in the WAC. Well, I don't know. Is that I don't know why it would cost to, well,
It's got a building
Um,
there and they use the electric.
Eric, can
For
you
ball game.
confirm if those, and also Public Works, probably maintaining the grass and stuff, is that all included in the WAX fund?
Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to answer that. I mean, right now, I could look into it tomorrow, but I don't know the answer to that right now.
Oh,
I
okay.
interject. We also have some contractual agreement, Audie, with the school for allowing the school to use that for girls softball. And I don't know how hard and firm that is, but I know that it's something we have to roll into our thoughts too.
Okay, the same with the skate park there, the bike park next to it. Is that all one piece or are they separate? That's my questions. If Brian or
You know
Eric
that,
can answer that.
Brian?
We don't charge anything for the skate park or the bike park there. Obviously, there are some expenses involved as we do still clean it for COVID, and there are some restrooms, but we usually lock them down until softball season starts. So there's no real direct expenses that you see there other than the other direct revenue, and the expenses are kind of rolled into, I'll have to ask Robert exactly where, but they're probably rolled into the WAC part-time help that does the cleaning.
Thank you. Let me check my list. I had,
So just one more, Don. So the
Yeah, go ahead.
electricity that's run for that softball, is that all included with the WAC, or is that a separate payment or what?
Repeat the question. I didn't hear all of it, Counselor.
The softball, that little clubhouse that's there at the softball diamond, is the electric separate from that, and the maintenance separate from electric and maintenance separate from the WAC, or is that all included?
Well, I can tell you the city's paying the electric. I'm not sure where if it's on the WAC meter or on another meter, but it's paying for the electric, and there's not really a lot of maintenance on the building. It's used primarily for storage and restrooms.
want to answer that also, Kathy? Did you have something?
Yeah. Well, I was trying to type, but obviously So, I know that I signed a separate bill for Horton Park for the electric bill. And then I also signed a separate bill for the WAC. So I think I don't know where the split is, but I do know that they are two separate ones.
They could still be allocated to the same fund. Eric actually might have with the GL codes, might be able to tell us if that's in the same fund.
Normally I would be able to, but at home, when I'm running Zoom, I don't have enough internet to hook up to the work computer and check that stuff.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's fine. We can look into that for the future, but my guess, Audie, would be is if it's not included with the WAC costs, it would have to be maybe rolled into parks. That would be the only other appropriate place I could think of that it would be for the expenses and revenue. Well, if there were any revenue. So that would also just be general fund.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, is how much it costs us to run it for the year versus how much we get for doing it.
Yeah. And we don't have a solid answer for that right now. Maybe we can get that when we meet again. Next up would be Counselor Hollett.
I forgot to lower my hand, sorry.
Oh, okay. Then I have Mayor Holston. You're
Kevin
muted.
Gobelman has his hand up too, and he hasn't
Yeah.
spoken yet, if you'd like to do him first.
Oh, thank you.
You're
Oh,
welcome.
Kevin, go ahead.
All right, so here's a wild and crazy idea for you. Why don't we entertain the thought of selling the WAC to the parties that are currently using it and lease back the council chambers to them? So we would be paying rent to them for the council chamber, they would own the building, and they could contract to the city for ongoing maintenance.
I guess that would depend on if all those entities wanted to go in together to purchase a building like that.
Well, I think that they provide essential services for the citizens, and I'd hate to see that go away or go someplace else where it's more inconvenient for people to get to them. So anyway, I would say we should explore it. I don't know. That would
Yeah,
be
so that would still fall under the topic of selling the WAC.
selling the building,
Right.
but not closing it, right?
Yeah. Right. Oh, well, I guess you're right. Selling versus closing.
And then you would be leasing back the chamber space to the people who have the building.
Right. And I think that if everyone else is on the same page, that the idea of closing the WAC equals selling the WAC. Is that what everyone else is thinking?
Yes.
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 Okay.
I see some
Good to
heads
know.
shaking no.
Oh, I can't see all the heads. So how many no's do we have?
They'd have to unmute their mic in order to announce their displeasure.
Actually, I think they could unmute their own mic. I don't have access.
I don't know, but before I go saying no, I would like to have some input into why and what other options we may have. But I wouldn't want to. My suggestion wasn't to close the WAC, but to
Right, that's
mothball it.
true. And we're not actually voting on this topic yet, so we should probably just keep going with roundtable discussion. Oh, Kevin Gobelman, did you have anything else you wanted to add to your ideas?
No, I think the other ideas that have been presented have been, legitimate. Thank you.
Okay, Priscilla.
Yeah, so I was just thinking about our continued deficit and how we're going to solve this. And if all these cuts seem minuscule with service fees and reduced staff, and I would like the honest discussion from the people here about privatizing the ambulance and the pluses and minuses of it. That's it.
Okay. I'm writing that down. Next I have, well, is there anyone else who's new? So next I would call on Mayor Holston again.
Thank you, Chair. So going back to the WAC discussion, this is it's one of those crazy times because of building. Let's see, what can I say? We did have a conversation, and the WAC is still of interest to other parties. But because of the cost of building right now and the exorbitant cost of doing anything, remodeling or tearing part of it down and redoing it in the vision that we've kind of kicked around for a while as far as community center with offices upstairs or possibly living spaces is not off the table. It's just totally on hold until building costs come down, just so that you're aware of that. So, I would advocate for raising the rents that we do charge, moving council chambers out of there and into the courtroom, so that we're not using that space. Then that leaves that space available to rent. It's a good space and it's a solid space with no leaks, and market it to rent out to see if we could do that before we try to sell it. It is a good piece to sell. I don't disagree with that, but I really am holding out hope that we can sell it and still use it for community services, in the situation where if we sell to the entity, then they would do the refurbishment and lease space back to us. So that's kind of where I'm thinking of it. I also wanted to agree with the statements, that a lot of these things are minuscule, as far as Horton Park or that type of thing. But I keep thinking in my mind that we're looking at 3 years. If we can do a fee, and if it's a little bit less and a little bit softer, and we show the citizens, like Jan Hooker had mentioned, that we have to put skin in the game, really isn't the word, but we have to show that we're willing to cut across the board too, by making cuts here and there too, and remind everyone this is a 3-year fee. This is a 3-year fee. And at the end of which time, we hope that we've reconstructed the ability to support our ambulance service, which is so important to us, in a way that is sustainable. So that's kind of what I'm looking at as we begin to whack away at some of these things, is to show good faith. I don't think we're going to be able to come up with any number unless we eliminate a policeman or two, and unless we eliminate firefighters or two, because that's where the significant costs are because of employment costs. But we can show good faith to the community. And I think that's kind of what we have to do. So no, I would not want to sell the WAC. I would want to leave our options open, but I would want to try to do everything we can to increase the revenue coming in from the WAC. So that's kind of where I am with that. All right, let me hit mute again.
Thank you, Mayor. Have Bobby listed as next, but it looks like your hand went down. Counselor Whitney, do you have anything you want to create right now?
I don't have anything new, but I did want to point out the two parks that we've listed are the only two parks that are in the Lemonade City area, and that's where most of our lower income people live. So I would hate to talk about eliminating both of those parks in some fashion. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Next, Priscilla, I saw your hand up again. Was that new or had you just not taken it down?
No, I thought I lowered it. I didn't mean to raise it again. Sorry.
Okay, okay. Counselor Hollett.
I wanted to kind of go back to the fee thing about Mayor Holston mentioned in the beginning about not waiving fees anymore. And I do, I kind of hate to do that because I think some of those events really need it. However, we're in a deficit. So I am kind of curious if that is also something maybe Brian could bring to the next meeting, that we see how many fees we've waived in the last year or past prior years. Because I think, when it happens so much, we kind of tend to forget. I have a feeling it's going to be small potatoes, but yeah, I think that might be something important to look at. I just wanted to say one thing about the ambulance privatization, that we did discuss that at the last meeting, and Brian gave a presentation about that, and it was only a $50,000 savings, and that would be also a cut from right now. We operate 2 ambulances, and from my understanding, that would be going down to only 1 ambulance, and it would also be a hybrid where we would have to supplement staffing if we were to have any second out calls. So it would only save $50,000, and it would mean you could only take care of 1 call at a time. I think that's all I have.
Just to clarify on that statement, the city would go down to 1 ambulance. There would still be a commercial ambulance available, so you would still have a second call out capability, 1 ALS, 1 BLS.
But did you say that there would still have to be staffing for that?
Yes, that's why the savings is only $50,000.
Gotcha.
And may I quickly ask, Brian, does that mean that the outside private service would be located here in Oakridge so they could respond immediately?
They would be able to respond immediately, and one way or the other, they'd be located in Oakridge. I don't think it'd necessarily be at our firehouse, but they would be here in the city, yes. And because I still would have to meet the 10-minute response time that's required by the ambulance service area instructions.
Okay. Counselor Hollett, is that a new hand?
I had something else, but I can't remember what it was now. I think it was about the WAC, but it seems like most everybody really wants to look into that that topic, and I feel like Mayor Holston really wants to try to keep the WAC. So I was kind of curious if maybe there's like a pros list that we have on why to keep it, just because it is something that I do feel like we need to sell it, but it would be nice to know, once we do, here's what we lose, this, and this. Yeah, I think that's all I had.
Okay, thank you. I actually wanted to comment on the WAC as well. I do feel like I did hear what Mayor Holston was saying regarding the costs right now to invest in remodeling would be extensive, but I would think that would fall on whoever the buyer would be, and so it would seem appropriate to me that it'd be a good time to sell to get out from under it. And if it takes them longer than than immediately to, you know, to hold off on making the updates that they might want to make, I guess that would be up to them. Isn't that right? I mean, I don't understand why the cost of a remodel would affect whether or not we would decide to sell it now.
If I respond now?
Yes,
Are you
please.
okay with that? So I wasn't necessarily meaning that the cost of a remodel would prohibit anything, but right now, you know, there is still strong interest in turning it into community services. So you know, the possibilities are open to turning it into community services buildings with housing on top of it, and then leasing it, and then turning it back to the city to run. St. Vincent's has talked about this for quite some time, and they are back in the game. The conversation that I had with them was that this just isn't a good time. They can't really begin to think about it because the cost of doing anything right now is so prohibitive. They've stopped building totally everywhere. I hate to lose a piece of property that is so central and in such a good location that we own to just anybody who wanted to do anything with it. You know, whether they wanted to turn it into, you know, a truck yard, or they wanted to turn it into, you know, duplexes. I mean, I don't know. I wish that we could still retain control over it. I know we're talking about budget. I know we're talking about finances, but it's just such a prime location. If we're going to sell a piece, you know, we kind of talked about location when we had the opportunity to sell the old public works building. And we said, it's such a good location. We don't really want to lose control of that location. And I feel very strongly about that with the WAC too, because the opportunity to turn it into something that is, that provides things for our community in a real positive manner would be lost, because there really isn't any other piece sitting down there. So I don't mean don't sell it because we can't afford to remodel it. I mean, don't sell it because things will change next year and we may be able to use it. And I wasn't suggesting that we mothball Horton Park. I was just suggesting that we look at the use and see if there are any fees that we should be charging associated with what is being used at Horton Park. But I did suggest selling Osprey Park.
Can I ask a question to Kathy?
Yes, of course. Go ahead.
Kathy, so you mentioned the stuff about St. Vincent's they're basically not in the position right now to buy the WAC, but are you saying that they would be in the future?
Well, you know, that's, you know, it's, well, you know how that is, Councilor Hollett, with those conversations. I had a really good conversation with them. They're very interested in reinvesting again in Oakridge. Which was a real positive, because there was a point a couple years ago where they had just walked away and said they didn't want to. But they were very honest with us and said, we just cannot afford to do anything. Everything they're doing is on hold because of the cost of construction right now. So while I didn't obviously get something written in writing saying yes, they would do it, it felt very, very positive that they really would like to do something that would benefit Oakridge and help us with, you know, our social services, office spaces, maybe even all of those combined with some sort of residential units too, because it's a nice big spot. So anyway, there's no promises. It's just, I hate to get rid of it. And I don't have any ties to it. I've been here long enough to have any ties to it.
Thank you, Mayor. Chrissy, did you want to follow up with that before I call on someone else?
No, thank you.
Councilor Whitney?
Um,
Oh, actually, go ahead, Councilor. I'm gonna do someone else next. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So just to start out, if anybody really has any ties to the WAC, it might be me, because I actually went to school there in kindergarten and first grade. So going into all this, I have a lot of nostalgia when I think of the WAC. And it's, it's kind of one of those things that you kind of hold dear, because we used to have our Sugar Plum Festival there as well. And I remember going there as a child. So, so I do have some ties to it, but I do recognize that it needs to be closed, because it's just, I just don't think it's a wise investment for us right now. And as you look at the UWCD, the food box, the Food for Lane County, I don't know if there is any other Food for Lane County location where the city is paying so much for them to be in our community. Like, I believe most of them go to churches and other places and get spaces for free or really low rent, like they're doing with us. But it's usually at a church, and we do have a lot of churches in our community. So I think that's just one piece to think about when you look at the WAC, because we really are, as a city, going above and beyond what other communities do for food banks and Food for Lane County. So I think that's really important to consider as we look at it. And I really strongly would like to close it, but I would like to also talk about maybe keeping just the gym open in that section. If there's a way to just keep that part open, because it is the more viable section. And if it's used and it's the more viable section, then it's more likely to still be standing when it comes time for somebody to buy it. And maybe they want to just remodel that, opposed to just tearing that section down. So that is the two comments that I had about the WAC at this point.
Thank you, Counselor. Jan Christensen, I'm going to call on you next.
Yeah, thank you. I have a feeling that the WAC is something good to hang on to, but it's not, it's a money pit right now. You can't fix it. You can't do anything with it. So if you can possibly increase the rent and then reduce the expenditures, it's there's a lot of expenses here that I think seem kind of high. The overhead and the building maintenance. I mean, what are you maintaining if it's so run down? It's, where are you putting that $4,500? Anywhere? Mowing the lawn? I saw them out there with a tractor mower or whatever, but until you can find someone who is interested in buying, maybe have it on the market, but increase the rent meanwhile and reduce the expenditures on it, and then give it 6 months or a year and see what happens. But have it for sale. I mean, if you don't get the buyer you want, you could always say no, right? Kind of like the TV Butte and nobody wants a quarry, can you say no to somebody who, let's not get I'm not going to say anybody in particular, but you don't want bad neighborhoods in there. I don't know. But everything everybody else has said, I kind of agree with. We've Kathy listed a lot of things that I agree with. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Splitoff, I'm going to call on you next.
Okay, the building that's right down there by the railroad tracks on Hill Street there is, what do we do with that? It looks like a junkyard. I mean, do we actually use it, or should we sell it? I mean, it's got grass taller than I am. It's got bikes in there that's been in there for God knows how many years. I mean, if we're not using that, we might as well sell that. That's some good real estate right there.
Very good real estate, Audie. It's right next to the track, right? I don't know. Ask Brian, what do we use it for?
It's the
Really
impound
find
lot
dead
for the
cars.
police department, and it's being cleaned up this next month, I believe, or this month by the police chief, and it'll be continue to be an impound lot. And once the cars are out of there, it'll be mowed. But I think we're kind of getting away from the real part of what the budget committee is here for, and that's to look at the current budget and maybe throw a few recommendations over to the council. But right now, it's not really in the budget committee scope to identify properties to sell.
Right, thank you, Brian. So I'd like to actually find out if, and I know Bobby, you have one. Go ahead and make your comment, and then I'll redirect.
Well, I just forgot to lower my hand.
Oh, okay. Councillor Hollett, did you have something?
When Brian was speaking, I just wanted to know if there's been changes to that $35 fee on the water bill, if that's been recalculated or not, or if it's the same number.
Over to Eric for that one.
Yeah, when I redid this budget, let me get the exact number for you. It's down at $31 now.
And what would that be, removing the WAC?
Oh, no, sorry. That's not including any changes that you guys have been talking about, because there hasn't been a vote to do anything. So this is just based off of the budget that I sent out to you guys earlier this week.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Eric, did you have something else you wanted to contribute?
What were we talking about right before the safety fee?
The WAC. Selling or raising rents.
I'm sorry, I forgot what I was going to say, but it wasn't about the WAC, so maybe I'll think of it in a minute.
Maybe it was about the impound lot.
Oh yeah, the impound lot.
No, I was looking at something else on the budget sheet here, and then when Chrissy asked about the fee, I flipped off the page I was looking at, so I don't remember what I was looking at, sorry.
Okay. I know the feeling. Well, I did want to say, in the essence of time, I feel like we've had a lot of discussion about the WAC. And I mean, we could keep going on about that, or we could, if anybody's interested in making a motion, we could try and see if we can move past that topic and onto one of the other many things that we could be discussing here tonight. Would anyone like to make a motion? Councillor
Yes.
Stoff? Oh, I called on Councillor Stoff.
Okay, you was broke up. Yeah, I move a motion that we put the WAC up for sale.
Can I make a friendly amendment?
Yes.
Can I change that to that we recommend to the council, because it's a council decision on selling the WAC. And I would also like to add that maybe we should recommend to the city to look at all properties.
I'll accept that.
So would I make that as recommend to the council to sell all, or to put up for sale all vacant properties? I mean, and including the WAC?
I would say recommend to council to sell the WAC and consider other properties for sale.
And Audie, do you agree with that?
I accept that.
And Chrissy, was that you that seconded it?
Sure.
Okay, Jackie, could we, or actually we want to now go into discussion on this motion. So I'm not sure who's first, but I see Mayor Holston, Councillor Whitney, Councillor Sweetoff, and, oh, he just went down. So Councillor Whitney and Councillor Hollett. And
I'll go
Councillor
first.
Coker.
Oh, okay. I'll go first, I guess. So as we've talked about the WAC, we've also talked about closing it, but that was not a part of the motion. And personally, I'd really like to see us close it in about the next 6 months, just to reduce the expenses there. I think that would tremendously help us and help with additional liabilities that come from having the WAC open. So that I think that would be important to consider as we look at the WAC, because the motion just says to put it up for sale. It's not finding another way to reduce costs at the WAC,
Right.
or in any way by either raising rents or closing it within maybe 6 months.
And Councillor, would you be willing to consider making a new motion after we vote on this one?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Splitoff, did you have something you wanted to add for this topic?
Yes,
This
I'd
motion?
like to know how much it cost just to mothball it, close it down and not have anybody in there. So that's going to make a big difference there too. So that's my question, What does it cost us just to run because you have to have heat and stuff in there anyway, or it's going to go to pieces and you're not going to have a building anyway. So you can't just shut the doors and turn electricity off. You still have to have heat in there.
Uh-huh. Actually, was that something, Brian, were you going to be bringing that information to this meeting? I think we've talked about that before.
So we did talk about, the question was asked, is the gym on a separate electric meter? The answer is no. So if the question was, do you want to keep the gym in active, then you'd have to have an electrician come in and separate the circuits. Councillor Spielhoff is correct. You wouldn't want to go cold iron on the thing because it's just going to rot. So your real savings are going to be, if you put it in cold storage, is to you save obviously on the cleaning costs, which is the people ready line item for temporary labor, and you'd lose the revenues. So that's kind of where you sit.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Holton, did you have something you wanted to add?
Thank you, Chair. So I think, we've had this discussion several times about the WAC. And I think just by saying, well, we like to direct the council to consider selling the WAC is one thing, but that really doesn't speak to the issue at hand here, because as we just heard, which we've heard before, we have to close the WAC down carefully. We can't just turn off everything and walk away from it. We want to be respectful about those people that are in it, to be able to get their things out and find another place to go. We need to keep a minimal amount of electricity to keep the heat on, the water on, so that we don't freeze pipes. We need to make sure that we have the minimal amount of insurance that we need on it, so that if it gets vandalized, that we aren't, what that would be. I mean, I don't know what all those come out to, but in the meantime, we have renters that we are getting income from. So, I think this motion to sell the WAC is fine. But that doesn't address the issue of reducing the expenses of it right now. In the future, yes, it's not going to sell tomorrow, and it's not going to sell before July 1, more than likely. No one wants to buy something right now that they can't remodel yet. But we do have a viable gym. And while they may not be the same circuit, or they may be the same circuit, that doesn't mean that you can't adjust the electricity use in the other part of the building and still leave the gym up and available for renting, for both theater, both community, other groups that might want to use it, because it is a source of income. I don't believe the cost of keeping it open is prohibitive, but I would not turn down an offer to sell it. So I think we're talking about two different things here. Yes, we may want to pursue selling it, but at the same time, we want to maximize any income that we can get out of it at this point and minimize the expenses as much as possible. So we can do both. So I just think we're getting kind of way out of where we need to be, picking off
Okay.
the little things. Sorry.
We do have a motion on the table, so I think that we should follow through with that unless there's someone who wants to withdraw a motion. Chrissy and Bobby, do you have more that you wanted to add to this topic? We're in discussion before we vote.
No.
Councilor Hollett?
No, I think we should just vote on if we want to recommend to council to consider selling the WAC and other properties.
Okay. Jackie, could you call for a vote?
Counselor Coker?
Aye.
What did you say?
Aye.
Okay. Jan Christensen?
Aye.
Counselor Spleedoff?
Aye.
Counselor Whitney?
Aye.
Brenna Chrisman?
Nay.
April Allen?
Aye.
Mayor Holston?
Nay.
Priscilla Davidson?
Nay.
Counselor Kenyon?
Aye.
Counselor Bjornson?
Aye.
Counselor Hollett?
Aye.
Kevin Gobelman?
Nay.
Okay, 8 ayes and 4 nays.
Thank you. That motion passed. Chrissy, is that a new hand?
No, I'm sorry.
Are there any other motions that we would want to consider at this time?
Yes, I have one.
Okay,
I
go
would
ahead.
like to make a motion that we close the WAC within 6 months, keeping the gym open for possible rental fees. Or rental services, sorry.
I'll second that, Counselor Bjornson.
Okay, we'll open for discussion. Counselor Whitney, is your hand for discussion?
No, it was just from when I was trying to make my motion. It's just hard to remember to
Okay.
lower every time.
Yeah. Counselor Spleedoff, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to find out, because Brian, maybe you can tell me, can we shut down just the rest of the building and then only run the heat and air in the gym? Or does that have to be reconfigured in order to do that?
Well, I mean, you could, like in the wintertime, obviously you're not going to want to shut it all the way off because you don't want freezing pipes. but you can turn down the thermostats, the individual thermostats across the building,
Mhm.
the minimum temperature, shut off the AC, and then just use the gym thermostat to keep it warm. I don't know if it's actually on the HVAC is divided or not. It's probably not, but there are individual thermostats throughout the building.
So how much would that reduce it by? I mean, because we don't get any rent for the gym, so we're still not gonna save any money.
Yeah, nominal. Yeah, it's not going to be. It's not going to come anywhere near what you're looking for. But you know,
Yeah.
40% maybe.
Okay, was that everything, Audie?
Yes, it was. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Coker?
So my question would be, within the 6 months, with this motion going in the 6 months, would that be everyone out by the time the 6 month comes up? Or how is this motion going, is what I'm asking.
Counselor Whitney, would you like to clarify?
Yeah, I would like to see everything closed within 6 months of it passing through council. So we're just recommending this to council. And then council makes the final decisions. And I think all those little things that we keep talking about here today, like the cost of electric and the little tiny details, are things that can be brought to council when this comes up on for council to look at, to really dig into those pieces of it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Bobby.
You're welcome.
Bobby, since you mentioned that, do you mind if I do a friendly amendment to your motion to add that you move to recommend to the council to close the WAC within 6 months?
Sure, that's fine.
Thank you.
Does
Okay, Mayor
Melissa second
Holston?
that? Sorry, does Melissa second that amendment?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Melissa, do you second?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. Mayor Holston.
No, that's okay. We just need to get onto the vote so we can get onto the business of what this budget committee is supposed to be doing.
Right. Counselor Hollett, did you want to add anything?
No, I'm ready to vote.
Okay. Jackie, can you call for the vote?
Counselor Hollett,
Aye.
Priscilla Davidson,
Aye.
Counselor Coker,
Aye.
Kevin Gobelman,
Nay.
April Allen,
Aye.
Counselor Bjornson,
Aye.
Brenna Chrisman,
Aye.
Counselor Slidoff,
Aye.
Counselor Whitney,
Hey,
Mayor Holston,
Nay.
Jan Christensen,
Aye.
Counselor Kenyon,
Aye.
ten ayes, 2 nays.
Thank you. That motion passes. Counselor Whitney, is that a new hand?
no.
Thank you. Counselor Holston, go ahead.
Mayor Holston?
I'm sorry. I'm so
It's
sorry,
okay.
Mayor.
I think it's cool. It's all right.
Mayor I'm
That's
just
fine.
saying council too much is all.
I know what that's like. Not a big deal. I would like to make a motion also to recommend to council that we reduce the stipend pay by 1/2. So I can't remember what that figure is, and I've missed my piece of paper. I'll find it. Well, I think that stands. Yeah.
I think it does too.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a second?
I second that. This is Priscilla.
Okay, thank you. We'll open the floor for discussion. And Mayor Holston, just so you know, your hand's still up. If you had. Okay, Councillor Whitney. Councillor Whitney, you're muted if you're talking.
Sorry, I was talking. I was talking while it was muted. So, we've had discussions about staff and making recommendations to cuts to staff, and we still have one of those recommendations in our list. And I think if we're going to be asking staff to make cuts and asking, making cuts to stuff that can impact citizens, I think it's only fair to make cuts with the stipend as well. And and it's not devaluing anything that anybody does or for the city or any of the volunteer work. It's just, I think it's just part of everybody contributing to making cuts and shouldering some of what we need to balance in this budget.
Was that everything?
Yes, I have a child trying to talk in the background, so I figured I'd make it quick.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Splitoff.
Yes, I'd like to find out how much is that going to save us, and how much is it going to cost us because of people may not want to volunteer for half stipend now. And is that going to cost us in are people not wanting to do it because it's not worth their time, or what? Because they're giving up a big chunk of their time now. And that's, I guess, what I want to find out, are we going to cut ourselves in the throat if we reduce that stipend and then nobody wants to do it? So then where are we stuck?
So this is CA. I think your point is good, because we really shouldn't be talking about cutting individual stipend pays. We should be talking about the line item that contains those stipend pays and cutting that in half. However, the other half of your question is, it's impossible to tell. I mean, it is a volunteer service, and the stipend is meant to attract volunteers. But in the end, I think all of these volunteers that work so hard do it to help the city, and I think they would continue to serve as they do now, even without the stipend pay, because they feel a calling for their work.
Thank you, Brian. Councillor Hollett, you're next.
I have a lot of things to say, but I wish before voting on this, we could hear from the people that it would impact, how much it would impact them. For instance, we have several people that come up from Eugene that I very highly doubt would be coming up to serve Oakridge when they live in another town. So I think Audie is spot on when he says, how is that going to impact services and staffing? And could it be shooting ourselves in the foot? And my opinion, of course, is yes, there's a good potential, because once you don't have volunteers staffing, it takes more than one person to get an ambulance down the hill. You might not have a driver. And I have been on the department when we were in that situation. before the stipend program, and we had, staffing was a lot harder of an issue. So there are other people that pay a babysitter so that they can be able to be available for that time. And you can't just get a babysitter to cover you on a moment's notice when an emergency comes in. You have to actually have someone for a longer period of time. So I really wish that there was a chance to really see the full impact of how that would affect the big circle, and also that the cost savings, I just don't think is worth the impact.
Thank you, Councillor Hollett. I have Councillor Bjornson next.
Yeah, at the risk of being railed for or being called, not a real volunteer because of the stipend, since I am a volunteer at the fire department. I find it a little bit insulting that this was put on the table like it was. I feel like it still is pitting, faction against faction as far as this budget goes. We have a lot of other cuts we should consider before we consider cutting anything else in emergency services, police included. But let's consider for a moment, nobody's thrown out there that we should maybe talk about contracting with LCSO. Would that be a cost savings? Maybe that would take away our deficit. I mean, I don't want to see that happen, but I still seriously feel like this is continuing to blame the fire department for the whole city shortfall when it shouldn't be placed on those shoulders. As a volunteer for a number of years now, I know what it takes to give up your time to do the things that firefighters, medics, drivers, all of that do. It's not easy. It takes a lot of training. We pay for our own uniforms because the city can't afford it. A lot of times we pay for our own training. We have babysitters. We take time away from our families in the middle of the night or any time that we need to. I know people that do it because they don't have to work a different full-time job. They are able to give that time because of the measly stipend that is there at the moment. And if that goes away, yeah, I agree. A lot of people aren't going to be able to, not that they don't want to or have the heart to, but financially feasibility goes away. The people that come up from Eugene, gas, time, wear and tear on their car, all of that stuff. It's just ridiculous. And I don't think this cut should be made. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. April Allen.
I agree with Melissa and Chrissy on this one. We do have a lot of volunteers that drive down from out of town and volunteers that do pay for sitting. And when you do look at what volunteers are getting paid, it's $100 for a 24-hour shift. That's just over $4 an hour when you break it down that volunteers are getting paid. I just wanted to add that in there.
Thank you, April. I'm going to go ahead and go next as well. I think that for as long as I've known some of the people in the fire department, I've heard numerous times over and over all the years that the volunteers are a critical part of the department. The department depends on them and needs them to run. Obviously, we've heard discussions from Brian on this very topic, that the department, if we only had the paid staff, we would not have enough coverage, even with the what are they called, the part-timers. We don't have enough coverage. The volunteers pick up all the slack, and sometimes we don't even have enough volunteers. So I think that if we were to reduce the only bit of you know, something positive that comes out of them devoting 24 hours at a time of their life, I think that it could potentially impact us in a bad way, and I don't think it would be a good idea. I think that I would not vote for this. I'm not in favor. I'm trying to see if there's any new names up here. To confirm, April, were you done? Your hand is still up.
I just wanted to add that, yes, we are in a budget crisis, but this having coverage for Oakridge and being able to take care of the people in this town is a necessity. That's all I had to say.
Thank you, April. Okay, so I have, I think everyone now is on round 2. I have Kathy first, and then Bobby, and then Audie. I apologize. Mayor Holston is first, Councillor Whitney, and then Councillor Splitoff.
Thank you. Having made the motion, I would have expected to be the first one to be able to speak into why I made the motion. But having heard everybody, it is helpful to hear that. So what I want to say to everyone, first of all, is this is about a line item. This is not about individuals. This isn't about singling out people who have to pay babysitting. This is about a line item. And I brought it to the attention because it has been a conversation and a question in our community. Why do we pay so much for people to volunteer? I have never said, nor will I ever say, that because you get a stipend, you are not a volunteer. If you have heard that in other arenas, that is too bad, because it's not true. A volunteer, whether or not you get reimbursed for your expenses, or whether you get a stipend to be a volunteer and to take care of the necessities of allowing you to be a volunteer, does not take away from you that you are a volunteer. What I am suggesting is that we do need to look at all of our expenses. And I find it a little bit difficult to listen to a budget committee who then explains that the reason why they should get it is because they need babysitting, or they need this or need that. I don't doubt those things, and how you spend your stipend is up to you. My reason for bringing this up is if we don't address the questions that come from our community and skirt the issues, then we're not doing our due diligence. I mean, if I had my druthers right now, I would withdraw the motion, but I will not, because I want this budget committee to vote on it so that they have made a stand for their community and to their community about what they believe is right or wrong. So I solidly urge all of you to take this out of the personal and put it back into the line item, because this is about a line item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe I said, Councillor, was it Councillor Whitney? Are you?
Yeah, it
next?
was me.
Thank you.
Yes, I am. So I have to say, none of my comments or anything are in any way meant to be negative towards the fire department, the EMTs, the volunteers there in any way whatsoever, because I truly do value everybody that's there. But as we're talking about stipends, I think it's important to remember our police department has a volunteer, and I believe they have a couple more coming up in the ranks possibly, and they don't receive stipends. Maybe we take some of the stipend and move some of it over to the police department to help create stipends for some volunteer police officers, so that we have extra coverage there as well. I mean, if we're looking at keeping it as well, maybe that's something that we can look at too. But I do think it's really important to keep looking at every item and different ways of cutting, and it's not meant to be personal in any way whatsoever. And I'm sorry if people have taken it that way, but that is absolutely not how I intended to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Counselor Sweetoff.
Yes, have you read the chat? There's people chiming in on the chat. Just want to make sure that you're aware of it.
Thank you. I actually don't monitor that because I'm busy running the meeting.
Okay.
And you're also not committee members, so I would recommend you don't take that into account until public comment.
Okay.
Yeah, we have public comment in the beginning of the meeting.
Okay,
Thank you, though. Is that everything?
that's good. Thank you.
Well, a couple of those comments are from counselors that are in the meeting.
I'm actually not going to open it. I'm sorry.
A
If
couple
someone
of the
wants to speak,
comments
they
were
can.
from me. This is Counselor Coker. I apologize.
Do you mind, Counselor Coker, if you have something you want to say, could you raise your hand?
Yes, I will.
That's the only. Okay, thank you. Everyone who's already spoken who is not interested in speaking again, could you please lower your hand? I'm getting, I think the next person up is, oh, actually, since everyone's already gone once, I'm gonna call on Jan Christensen. She hasn't spoke yet.
I'm just wondering, at the last meeting, Jan Hooker brought up that a lot of administrative costs, and I'm assuming this would also be for emergency services. They have the 7% health insurance, that their portion they pay. Was that visited if they could pay more? I know you have to go through the union and all that, but that would be a line item. And I mean, I'm on Medicare and I pay more than 7%. You know, I mean,
Right.
that kind of seems fair to me.
I'd like to call the question.
Yeah, actually, I was just gonna explain, Mayor Holston. Jan, when we have a motion on the table and it's been seconded. So the process right now is to have discussion on this motion, and then we call for a vote, and then we can talk about exactly what you just brought up. So if you don't mind holding on to that for later.
Okay, great.
Okay. Counselor Hollett, did you want to add? Oh, actually,
I called the question. I called the question, Chair.
We have a call for the question.
Okay. Can we, so the question is to recommend to council to reduce the stipend by half. It's seconded by Priscilla. That was a motion made by Mayor Holston. And Jackie, can you call for the vote?
Counselor Sweetoff,
Nay.
Kevin Gobelman,
Yay.
Counselor Kenyon,
Nay.
Brenna Chrisman,
Aye.
Counselor Whitney,
Aye.
Jan Christensen,
Aye.
Mayor Holston,
Aye.
what was that?
Aye.
Thank you. Priscilla Davidson,
Aye.
April Allen,
Nay.
Counselor Hollett,
Nay.
Counselor Bjornson,
Nay.
Counselor Coker,
Nay.
there's a tie.
Am I
That
right
means
or
it
wrong
fails.
in that potential conflict of interest individuals are voting on this motion?
Yes.
Kevin, that's actually legal, and we have a motion that failed. So is there anyone that wants to talk about something else or have a new motion? Counselor Hollett?
I don't have anything on this topic right now. The only thing I said was that a tie does fail if we are moving on. In my last budget meeting, I brought up talking about pay freezes across the board, but I did want to clarify with Brian by his email that he sent out to the budget committee if that is something that is not allowed to be discussed. Yeah.
So it's something that obviously is going to have to go back to the union. If I was able to do that. So if you're going to deal on a line item basis, then yeah, go ahead and either freeze the line item for last year for the pay, and we'll see what happens, you know, either through layoffs or through negotiation with the union. I'll try to meet that budget figure, but to actually just come out and say across the board line item freeze, across the board salary freeze, to me, it's outside the scope of the budget committee.
The reason that I brought it up is I thought that it had been done in previous years, and I don't know which year, but that was my understanding, is that it had been done in previous years, especially during the time that Mr. Barclay was a counselor and the city had a huge fiasco. I thought I recalled that they did pay freezes across the board.
Tracy, you're right. And if I might interject, is while you can't direct that a pay freeze is done, we can direct that we open negotiations with the 3 unions, and it has to be across the board with the 3 unions, to negotiate a pay freeze for a specific amount of time, and or any other criteria that you wanted to throw in there, as far as also looking at increased employee contribution toward healthcare. But it has to be broad stroked, it has to be all 3, and it has to be a direction to negotiate. So that's, if that's helpful.
It is helpful, but so is the answer that the budget committee cannot recommend that we do a pay freeze, is what I'm hearing?
So I want to ask a clarifying question. Could the budget committee recommend that the council consider negotiating pay freezes? Just something that simple.
Yeah.
Yes.
Was that a yes, we can do that, Brian?
That's correct.
I'll make a motion for that.
I'll second it.
I'll make a motion that the budget committee recommends that the CA negotiate with all of the unions and city staff for a pay freeze for the fiscal year 21-22.
Does that sound like an appropriate motion, Brian, or should it say recommend that we ask the council to
Yeah, the council is going to be after the one to direct me. So you would ask the council to me to enter into negotiations for a pay freeze with all unions, and then and as well as exempt personnel.
Can I accept that friendly amendment?
Not from me, you can't.
From Councilor Kenyon.
Yes. That is a friendly recommendation or amendment. So I have written down that you're recommending to council to negotiate pay freezes across the board in the budget. Does that sound appropriate?
I have to interject here. I do not think that it is appropriate to accept a motion from the spouse of someone whose pay we are about to affect. Nor do I think it would be appropriate for any individual who either receives a paycheck, not a stipend, a paycheck, or whose spouse receives a paycheck to be voting on this. I just think that's a
appreciate your
conflict.
In the budget committee, I am allowed to do so.
I would
It seems like
strongly
a
suggest you shouldn't.
violation to me.
I've actually spoke to the ethics committee. Have you, Priscilla?
I will be tomorrow.
I don't have, someone else can make the motion. That's fine.
Are you withdrawing your motion, Chrissy?
I guess.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion that the budget committee recommend to council to negotiate pay freezes across the board in the budget. Is there a second?
I'll second that, Dawn.
Who was that? April?
Yes, that was me. I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and now we'll go into discussion.
Dawn, will you say the motion again? I got most of it.
Yes. I recommend that the council negotiate pay freezes across the board in the budget.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Now I have a lot of hands up. I'm gonna call on, I don't know the order, to be honest with you. I'm gonna call on Counselor Whitney.
Okay, I just have a comment. I'm feeling really frustrated because we just had a motion to suggest pay freezes for staff. So we're asking staff to give up something for this budget. We are talking about a $35 fee so we're asking all citizens to contribute something for this budget. But we just voted down something to cut a stipend. It doesn't make any sense to me that we're cutting everywhere else. It just kind of, it's just confusing to me and I'm not understanding it. So personally, I don't think we should be asking staff to have a pay freeze. You know, before when we've had pay freezes, it also had to do with the economy that was statewide and national wide. A lot of state and county agencies had pay freezes in place for quite a few years. And I was one of them, so I remember that very well. So I do not agree with a pay freeze for staff at all.
Thank you, Counselor. Were you done?
Yes.
Thank you. I want to make a quick announcement that we are at time right now. We got about 1 minute left. So I'm going to ask, we need to finish this vote, but I'd like to ask everyone to please go as quickly as possible and to say everything you want to say on one turn so I don't have to go round table or over and over. And then we need to vote and push everything else over to the next meeting. So I have next, Counselor Hollett.
This is gonna sound really weird, but I have spoke to the ethics multiple times on you know, what is a conflict of interest and not. But I do want to take Mayor Holston's advice to heart and re-ask the question in a different way to the Ethics Commission on whether I should be voting in the budget committee process on something that could affect a family member's wage. And I believe that would affect 3 people on the budget committee right now. So I almost feel like we should wait on this to vote on it. Because I think if Mayor Holston is correct, then it could be you cannot vote on a spouse, whether it increases or decreases or stays the same. So just a thought that maybe we should hold off on voting for this.
I would like to respond to that. A potential conflict by law means that you can participate in the discussion because you're only making a recommendation to council.
That's what I thought.
I've spoke to the Ethics Commission on this, and I have an email that states that too from them. I believe it's perfectly legal when you're required to vote or to declare a potential conflict to participate in all discussions and voting to pass this on to council.
That was my understanding as well, because we're only recommending it to the council. It's not a final vote, but
that's right.
Just bringing it up.
I actually made the motion and I'm not interested in withdrawing it. So I'm going to continue. Councilor Scuda.
Yes. Could I hear the motion again? Make sure I'm right
Yeah.
on, please.
Yes, I made a motion to that we recommend that the council negotiate pay freezes across the board in the budget.
I'd like to make a friendly amendment to that. That we recommend council instruct our CA to do the negotiations.
Yes, I would accept that friendly amendment. Although I would add that that's what that means. If council's going to do something, they would recommend, or they would ask the CA to do the work. But I will add that. And does April agree to second that?
Yes, I agree.
Thank you.
Okay, so now I have that I recommend that the council direct our city administrator to negotiate pay freezes across the board in the budget. Okay, Councilor Coker.
I'm sorry, I forgot to take my hand down.
Okay. And Eric.
Yeah, all I wanted to say was I'm gonna need to research this more, but accounting wise, I need to be putting down the most conservative numbers on the budget. So I don't think that making a motion to have Brian talk to the unions about wage freezes will really allow me to change the wage numbers in the budget. And so that's my concern, and I'll definitely research that before we meet again.
Thank you. And I actually agree with that. I don't think that the results of this motion will affect the numbers in the budget until we would actually have, the negotiations be finished, at which time we might adjust the budget with a supplemental if it made a difference by the recommended dollar amount. But for now, it's I think it's appropriate because it gives Brian more leverage that our budget committee has said we have a problem and we need. We're hoping that negotiating a pay freeze would help us with our budget.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that.
Okay, and Christensen.
Is this where you can add to this, the 7% change in the insurance? If you're going to go for negotiations with the unions anyway, isn't that something that would definitely change the money situation a little?
That's true. Are you making a friendly amendment?
Yes. And I think, I don't know, do you need to mention that it's the pay freeze is a time constraint involved with it as well? I heard that mentioned, but not in the proposal.
Oh, a time limit on the pay freeze?
Yes.
Okay, so if you're making a friendly amendment, it would say, so we would complete the first sentence, recommend to council to direct our city administrator to negotiate pay freezes across the board in the budget. And you would add, and
With a time limit and a change in their insurance rates, or however you would word that.
okay. And increase employee cost for insurance. Okay. And April, do you agree with that friendly amendment?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Hollett,
Yes.
your hand is up. Did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I just can't seem to click that button to take my hand down. I'm sorry.
I do have a comment if you have time.
A comment from a budget committee member?
No, from the CA, I'm entitled.
Oh, yes, please do. I'm sorry.
So number one, I'm on a permanent pay freeze, so I have no interest in this personally. However, I think anyone that's managed anyone knows that your very most important resource is people. And we negotiated with the unions this past spring, and they did take reductions in their cost per living allowances and the like. I know people are focused on the highest paid people in the city, but understand that people that work in admin, they're making slightly more than someone that works at McDonald's. So you're going to impose a pay freeze on them to help pay the bills. You know, it's the way to get people to walk is what you're doing. So I'd recommend you focus on something else, even if it has to be individual positions and not this. And when you go back to the unions, you got 3 bargaining units. One of them might say, okay, we'll take that. And then the other 2 don't. So then you have an imbalance or you don't do it at all. So to me, you're chasing, and like Eric says, it may not be reflected in your current budget that you're considering right now. So I'd recommend move on and find something else.
Thank you, Brian. Mayor Holston.
Thank you, Chair. I'll make it brief. I think, I think Brian's points are well taken. That we are looking at things and we are trying to make a statement to our community that we are willing to make cuts in the hard places. Obviously, we are very selective about where we are making cuts. And it seems to me that what we're really doing is avoiding the bigger issue. We really need to decide between one of the 3 options that was presented in the budget committee. And while it sounds attractive and it sounds like we're doing due diligence by reaching out and putting caps on people's pay, and that happens all the time. I've had it as a state employee too, and it wasn't a fun thing to do. I do recognize that our employees are paid at the lower end of the wage scale, and we need to really keep that in mind. And they do way more than what their pay range is allotted, as well as job descriptions. They wear multiple hats, every one of them. So I would recommend that this not get voted through. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that ends our discussion. I see no more hands. So I'm going to ask Jackie to please call for the vote.
Mayor Holston, Mayor Holston,
Nay.
Counselor Whitney,
Nay.
Brenna Chrisman,
Nay.
Counselor Coker,
Nay.
Priscilla Davidson,
Nay.
Counselor Spleedoff.
Nay.
What did you say?
Nay.
Thank you. April Allen, April Allen,
Aye.
Kevin Gobelman,
Nay.
Jan Christensen.
Nay.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
No.
Thank you. Counselor Kenyon,
Aye.
Counselor Bjornson,
Aye.
Counselor Hollett,
Aye.
Wow.
8 nays and 4 ayes.
Thank you, Jackie.
Kathy,
Our
can you
next
mute
meeting-
next time? We heard you laughing at us. It's incredibly
No, no,
unprofessional.
I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at my dog who's begging for my salami, Chrissy.
Our next meeting is going to be on May 25th. I believe that's next Thursday, but I don't have my calendar. Or no, is it Wednesday?
May 25th at 6 PM, Counselor.
Thank you. I'm not sure what day of the week it is, but May 25th next week at 6 PM is our next meeting with a public hearing.
Tuesday.
Until then,
We're not ready for the public hearing yet, so we won't do that.
oh,
Well, let me take that back. No, we're going to have to wait even on the other public hearing for shared services.
so we are going to have a public hearing at May 25th's meeting.
No, I'm sorry.
Is that what you're?
Until the budget's approved, we cannot do that.
Okay.
I mean, I would hope that the committee is going to try to approve a budget at the next meeting. But until we're
We'll see.
at a point where, if you think we're that close, then we can try to put on the shared services public hearing to talk about that. And then the hearing with city council will be on the approved budget and shared services.
Okay, so for now, we're scheduling, we have one more meeting next week on May 25th,
Yes.
and it's likely not to have a public hearing, but public comment is welcome at every meeting. So we'll see everyone next week. This meeting's adjourned.
Thank you,
Good
Don.
night, everyone.
Night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.